Just days after burying my husband, my sister shocked everyone at her own son's first birthday by declaring her child was secretly his and demanding half of my $800,000 home with a forged will. What she never expected was the undeniable proof I held that would unravel her entire scheme and turn the tables forever. The scene was set days after my husband's funeral, at my sister's son's first birthday celebration. There, she declared, "My son is your husband's child. As inheritance, I'm taking half of your $800,000 home." She even produced what she claimed was his will. My response? "Oh, I understand." I fought to suppress a wave of laughter. My name is Bridget, and at 34, I never envisioned becoming a widow. Just 3 months prior, Adam, my husband of 11 years, was suddenly taken from me by an aneurysm. With his burial barely behind us, I found myself trudging to my nephew Lucas's first birthday party. That's when my sister, Cassandra, unleashed her bombshell. She announced that Lucas was, in fact, Adam's son, then paraded a will, demanding half of our $800,000 residence. What she couldn't possibly have known was the true reason I could barely contain my amusement. If this tale of family discord resonates with you, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. Believe me, you'll want to hear how I navigated what came next. Adam and I first crossed paths 12 years ago at a charity auction benefiting children with cancer. I was assisting with the silent auction items when he outbid everyone for a painting I had been captivated by all evening, a watercolor of the Boston skyline at sunset, where vibrant oranges and purples bled into the harbor. After securing the piece, he walked directly to me and presented it. "I noticed your admiration for this all night," he said, a smile crinkling the corners of his blue eyes. "I believe it truly belongs with you." That was Adam, deeply considerate, remarkably perceptive, and overly generous. I fell completely and swiftly. Our first date followed the very next evening, and it felt as though we had known each other our entire lives. He was a corporate attorney, brilliant yet unassuming, the sort of man who recalled the names of waitstaff and genuinely inquired about their lives. 8 months after we met, he proposed by the harbor, the actual skyline mirroring the painting that first united us. We acquired our Victorian dwelling in Beacon Hill soon after our first anniversary. Valued at $800,000, it was a financial stretch, but Adam had just been named partner at his firm, and I was establishing a strong reputation as an interior designer. The house required substantial work, but possessed excellent structural integrity, soaring ceilings, and a small backyard garden where I pictured our future children playing. Those children, however, never arrived, despite our persistent efforts. For years, we tracked, planned, and held on to hope. Then came the endless stream of doctors, tests, and procedures. 4 rounds of IVF depleted both our financial resources and our spirits. I vividly recall the final failed attempt, the silent journey home from the clinic, Adam reaching across the console to clasp my hand. Neither of us spoke, as we both understood that road had reached its end. "We can still build a beautiful life," Adam whispered that night as we sat on our porch swing. "Just you and me. That's enough." And he truly meant it. Slowly, we began to reconstruct our aspirations. We traveled extensively, immersed ourselves in our careers, and painstakingly renovated our home, room by room, until it became the showcase I had always envisioned. Adam wholeheartedly supported my business when I decided to launch my own interior design firm. Our life was rich and fulfilling, though distinct from our initial plans. My younger sister, Cassandra, always lingered at the edges of our happiness. 4 years my junior, at 30, she had consistently been the family's free spirit. While I dedicated myself to studying design and building a business, she drifted between various jobs and relationships. Our parents perpetually worried about her, which often translated into them excusing her behavior and repeatedly rescuing her from financial difficulties. Cassandra and I shared a complex dynamic since childhood. She was undeniably beautiful, possessing an effortless charm that attracted people, but an underlying current of competition always flowed from her side. If I achieved something, she felt compelled to surpass it. When I began dating Adam, she suddenly developed an interest in law students. When we purchased our house, she spent months complaining about her apartment, subtly pressuring our parents to help her upgrade. It was mentally exhausting, but Adam encouraged me to maintain our bond. "She is your only sister," he would remind me. "Family is vital." 2 years ago, Cassandra started a relationship with Tyler, a bartender she met through friends. He was ruggedly handsome, with tattooed arms and a motorcycle that earned our parents' disapproval. Their relationship appeared volatile from the outside, marked by dramatic separations and fervent reconciliations. Then came the pregnancy announcement at Thanksgiving dinner the year before Adam's passing. It was, to say the least, unforeseen. Here I was, diligently meeting societal expectations, and yet she dramatically announced her pregnancy, complete with theatrical tears and declarations about life's miracles. A familiar pang of jealousy struck me. After all our struggles, all our heartache, Cassandra had accidentally achieved what we had so desperately yearned for. But I suppressed those emotions. I was genuinely happy for her and determined to be the most devoted aunt to her child. Lucas was born a healthy 8 pounds, 4 ounces. I was at the hospital, bearing flowers and a handmade blanket I had spent months meticulously knitting. Cassandra seemed overwhelmed by motherhood from the outset, frequently calling me in tears about Lucas's colic or her own exhaustion. I intervened as much as I could, sometimes caring for Lucas overnight, so she could rest. Adam was less involved with Lucas than I was. In hindsight, I attributed it to our own infertility struggles, believing it might be too painful for him to form a deep bond with a child who wasn't ours. He was always kind when Cassandra brought Lucas over, but he maintained a certain emotional distance that I never questioned at the time. Then came that dreadful Tuesday morning. Adam mentioned a headache before heading to work. I urged him to stay home, but he had an important client meeting. Just a migraine, he insisted, kissing me goodbye. I'll call you after the meeting. That call never arrived. Instead, I received one from the hospital. By the time I got there, he was already gone. A brain aneurysm, they said. Nothing could have been done. He was 36 years old. The following days blurred into a haze of arrangements and profound sorrow. Cassandra was conspicuously absent for much of it, sending text messages claiming Lucas was unwell or she couldn't secure a babysitter. When she did appear at the funeral, she stayed briefly, keeping to herself and departing before the reception. I was too consumed by grief to dwell on it then. 1 week after we laid Adam to rest, Lucas's first birthday arrived. Attending a child's birthday party was the absolute last thing I desired, but family obligations weighed heavily. Adam would want you to go, my mother insisted during one of her daily check-in calls. He always prioritized family. So, I found myself driving to Cassandra's modest rental house in a less desirable part of town. A wrapped gift rested on the passenger seat, and dark circles beneath my eyes defied any amount of concealer. I had barely slept since Adam's death, spending nights gazing at his empty side of the bed, reaching for a warmth that was no longer there. I parked behind a line of vehicles and took several deep breaths before retrieving the gift and heading inside. No one should have to feign happiness so soon after losing their spouse, I mused, but I pasted on a smile and knocked on the door. Cassandra's friend, Jenna, opened it, her eyes widening slightly at my presence. "Oh, Bridget, you made it," she said, her voice unusually strained. She glanced over her shoulder before stepping aside. "Come in. Everyone is in the backyard." The small house was adorned with blue balloons and streamers. A banner proclaiming, "Happy First Birthday, Lucas," stretched across the living room wall. I noticed a group of unfamiliar faces clustered in the kitchen, whispering. They fell silent as I passed, their gazes following me. In the backyard, more guests stood in small groups, plastic cups in hand. I spotted my parents seated awkwardly at a picnic table, looking distinctly uncomfortable. My father stood upon seeing me, relief washing over his face. "Bridget," he said, embracing me. "We weren't sure you'd come." "Of course, I came," I replied, placing the gift on the designated table. "Where's the birthday boy?" "With Cassandra," my mother offered, not quite meeting my eyes. "They should be out soon for the cake." I mingled uncomfortably, accepting condolences and deflecting questions about my well-being. Everyone seemed on edge, conversations ceasing abruptly when I approached. I attributed it to people not knowing how to act around a recently widowed person. After 30 minutes of discomfort, Cassandra emerged from the house, carrying Lucas on her hip. She wore a new dress I hadn't seen before, her hair freshly highlighted. Lucas looked adorable in a small button-up shirt and bow tie, his chubby legs kicking with excitement at all the attention. Cassandra barely acknowledged me as she settled Lucas into his high chair. She appeared energized, almost exuberant, moving about the yard with unusual self-assurance. She tapped a spoon against her cup, calling for everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Lucas's special day," she began, her voice carrying across the yard. "This past year has been full of surprises and challenges, as many of you know." The guests exchanged glances. My mother suddenly became very interested in her shoes. "I've been keeping a secret," Cassandra continued, placing a hand on Lucas's head, "one that I can no longer hide, especially after recent events." A chill snaked down my spine. Something felt profoundly wrong. "Lucas is not Tyler's son," she announced, her eyes finding mine across the yard. "He is Adam's." The world seemed to halt. I heard gasps around me, felt my father stiffen beside me, but it was all background noise to the roaring in my ears. "Bridget's husband and I had a brief affair 2 years ago," Cassandra continued, her voice steady and rehearsed. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness for both of us. We never intended to hurt anyone, but these things happen." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. My sister was claiming she had slept with my husband, that her son, the nephew I had lovingly cared for, was actually Adam's child. It was so utterly absurd that I nearly burst into laughter. Cassandra wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and produced a folded document. Adam knew the truth about Lucas. Before he died, he updated his will. She held up the paper. He wanted his son to be provided for. This will states that half of the house Adam and Bridget owned should go to Lucas as his biological child. Every eye in the yard turned to me. I could see the pity, the morbid curiosity, the discomfort. My parents looked aghast, my father half standing as if unsure whether to intervene. And then, to everyone's surprise, including my own, I felt a smile tugging at my lips. Not a happy smile, but the kind that surfaces when something is so outrageously false it borders on comical. I pressed my lips together, fighting to contain the inappropriate laughter bubbling up inside me. "Oh, I see," I finally said, my voice calm and steady. I took a sip of water, buying time to quell the urge to laugh directly in my sister's face. "May I see this will, Cassandra?" Her confident expression faltered slightly. She clearly hadn't anticipated this reaction. Slowly, she walked over and handed me the document, a typed page with what appeared to be Adam's signature at the bottom. I scanned it quickly, noting inconsistencies immediately. The formal language was entirely incorrect, nothing like the legal documents I had seen Adam bring home. And the signature, while superficially similar to Adam's, was clearly forged. The connecting stroke between the and D was wrong, the final flourish too pronounced. I carefully refolded the paper and handed it back to her. "Thank you for sharing this with me. I think I need to go now." "That's it?" Cassandra asked, confusion evident in her voice. "You're not going to say anything else?" "Not right now," I calmly replied, gathering my purse. "This is Lucas's day. We can discuss this privately later." I bid farewell to my shell-shocked parents, promising to call them soon. As I walked to my car, I could hear the murmurs behind me, the party atmosphere completely shattered. Once safely inside my car, out of view, I finally released the laugh that had been threatening to escape. It began as a small chuckle, then swelled until tears streamed down my face. Not tears of joy, but a strange confluence of grief, anger, and incredulous disbelief at my sister's sheer audacity. Because there was something Cassandra didn't know, something Adam and I had never shared with anyone, something that made her elaborate fabrication not just hurtful, but utterly impossible. The truth about Adam and Cassandra's interactions began 3 years ago, long before Lucas was even a thought. We had invited my sister over for dinner to celebrate her new job at a marketing firm, her longest employment to date. Adam had prepared his famous lasagna, and we had uncorked a fine bottle of wine. It was a pleasant evening until I excused myself to take a work call from a client experiencing a design emergency. The call extended longer than anticipated, nearly 20 minutes spent guiding a wealthy client through hanging artwork. When I returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had subtly shifted. Adam looked uncomfortable, and Cassandra was seated much closer to him than when I had left, her hand resting on his arm, laughing at something I hadn't heard. I dismissed it at the time. Cassandra had always been affectionate, and the wine had been flowing freely. But later that night, as we prepared for bed, Adam seemed troubled. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, sitting on the edge of our bed. "And I don't want it to cause problems between you and your sister, but I also don't want to keep secrets from you." He explained that while I was on the phone, Cassandra had made an advance toward him. Nothing overtly dramatic, just inappropriate remarks about how fortunate I was to have him, followed by a suggestion that he deserved someone who could truly appreciate him. When he gently rebuffed her, she merely laughed it off as a joke, claiming I was too sensitive if he thought she was serious. I was hurt, but not entirely surprised. Cassandra had always pushed boundaries. We chose to let it pass as an isolated incident, something attributed to the wine and her usual competitive nature. However, it was not isolated. Over the subsequent months, Cassandra found subtle ways to touch Adam when I wasn't looking, sent text messages that blurred the line between friendly and flirtatious, and on one occasion, arrived at his office uninvited, asking him to lunch. Each time, Adam gently but firmly maintained boundaries and informed me immediately afterward. Following the office incident, we confronted my parents about Cassandra's behavior. It did not go well. They suggested Adam was misinterpreting friendly gestures and that Cassandra merely admired him like a brother. My mother even implied, with good intentions but terrible judgment, that perhaps Adam was flattered by the attention and exaggerating the situation. That night, Adam and I made a resolute decision. We would create distance from Cassandra without causing a family rift. We declined invitations that included her, ensured we were never alone with her, and Adam blocked her number on his phone after she sent a particularly suggestive late-night message. Then came the medical issue that irrevocably changed everything. Adam had been experiencing pain for weeks before finally consulting a urologist. The diagnosis was a varicocele, an enlargement of veins within the scrotum requiring surgery. The procedure went well, but a complication arose. The doctor recommended a vasectomy during the same operation due to the extensive nature of the varicocele and the potential for recurrence. It was a challenging decision, especially given our past fertility struggles, but we agreed it was the right choice for Adam's long-term health. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before Lucas was conceived. We kept this medical information strictly private. Not even our parents knew. After years of invasive questions about our childless status, we had learned to fiercely guard our privacy regarding reproductive matters. The only individuals aware were Adam, myself, and Adam's medical team. After the surgery, as Adam was recuperating, he made a prediction that seemed almost paranoid at the time. "Cassandra isn't done," he stated, sitting in our garden with an ice pack discreetly positioned. "I have a feeling she might attempt something more drastic one day." I laughed it off, but Adam was serious. The following week, he scheduled an appointment with our family attorney, James Wilson. I accompanied him, listening as Adam meticulously detailed Cassandra's behavior and his recent medical procedure. James advised documenting everything: the unwanted advances, the medical records confirming the vasectomy, even text messages and emails from Cassandra. "You never know what might become relevant," James cautioned. "It's better to have documentation and never need it than wish you had it later." We followed his advice, compiling a comprehensive file of everything related to the situation. Adam also properly updated his will through official channels, ensuring everything would be bequeathed to me in the event of his death. James retained copies of all documents, and we placed the originals in a safety deposit box at our bank. "Just in case," Adam had said when we locked the box, "though I fully intend to be around to manage any of Cassandra's drama for at least another 50 years. The morning after Lucas's birthday party, I drove straight to the bank. The manager, who had known Adam and me for years, offered condolences as he escorted me to the vault. I sat alone in the small viewing room and opened the box Adam and I had filled with what he jokingly called our disaster preparation kit. Inside was precisely what I needed: Adam's legitimate will, notarized and properly executed, leaving everything to me. Medical records detailing his vasectomy 2 years before Lucas's conception, making it biologically impossible for him to be the father. A journal Adam had meticulously kept, documenting every inappropriate interaction with Cassandra, including dates, times, and exact quotes. Printed copies of suggestive text messages she had sent him, and a letter from our attorney confirming he had witnessed Adam's legitimate will and was available to verify its authenticity. At the bottom of the box, a sealed envelope bore my name in Adam's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. "My dearest Bridget, if you are reading this, something has happened to me, and you have needed to access these documents. I hope it is many years from now when we are old and gray and Cassandra's antics are nothing but a distant memory we laugh about. But if not, if the worst has happened and she has tried to hurt you in my absence, please know that I try to prepare for every possibility. Use these documents to protect yourself. I know how much you value family, how loyal you are to those you love. But you deserve to be protected from those who would take advantage of that beautiful heart of yours. I love you beyond words, beyond time. Whatever happens, know that. Adam." Tears streamed down my face as I read his words, feeling his love and protection reaching out to me even after death. My practical, thoughtful husband had indeed anticipated this, not the specific scenario, perhaps, but the genuine possibility that Cassandra might attempt to exploit his passing for her own gain. I carefully returned everything to the box except for the necessary copies: the medical records, the legitimate will, and selected journal entries. Then I called James Wilson and scheduled an appointment for that same afternoon. James Wilson's law office occupied a converted brownstone in downtown Boston, the kind of establishment that exuded old money and discreet professionalism. I had only visited a handful of times with Adam, but the receptionist recognized me immediately, her expression softening with sympathy. "Mrs. Preston," she said, standing to greet me, "Mr. Wilson is expecting you. Please accept my condolences for your loss." James, in his 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, had been Adam's mentor when Adam first joined the firm, and they had maintained a close friendship even after Adam moved to a different practice. He stood when I entered, coming around his desk to embrace me briefly. "Bridget," he said, gesturing for me to sit. I was devastated to hear about Adam. He was one of the good ones. He was. I agreed, my voice catching slightly, and it seems he was also right about preparing for the worst with my sister. I recounted what had transpired at the birthday party, showing him the forged will Cassandra had presented. James examined it, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This is an amateurish forgery," he observed finally. "The language is completely incorrect, and the signature, while similar, would never withstand expert analysis. but the mere fact that she created this at all is deeply troubling. I then presented him with the documents from the safety deposit box, the medical records confirming Adam's vasectomy, the legitimate will, and Adam's journal documenting Cassandra's behavior over the years. Adam was nothing if not thorough, James remarked, reviewing the materials. These medical records alone decisively disprove her claim about Lucas's paternity. The vasectomy was performed 2 years before the child was conceived. It is biologically impossible for Adam to be the father. What should I do? I asked. I don't want to humiliate her publicly, but I cannot allow her to seize half of our home based on a lie. James leaned back in his chair, contemplating. First, we need more information. I recommend hiring a private investigator to look into Cassandra's current situation. There is likely a motivation beyond simple cruelty here. People rarely attempt fraud of this nature without significant financial pressure. He recommended Frank Delaney, a former police detective who now worked as a private investigator, often assisting the firm with complex cases. I agreed, and James made the call immediately, explaining the situation in broad strokes. Frank arrived an hour later, a stocky man with a distinctive Boston accent and a no-nonsense demeanor. He took detailed notes as I recounted the situation, asking pointed questions about Cassandra's relationships, history, employment, and financial status. I realized how little I actually knew about my sister's current circumstances. We had grown increasingly distant since Lucas's birth, with my attempts to be involved as an aunt often rebuffed or simply taken for granted. I'll need a few days, Frank said when I had finished. My preliminary focus will be on her financial situation and her relationship with the child's actual father. Is there anything else you can tell me about him? I shared what little I knew about Tyler, the bartender Cassandra had been dating when she became pregnant. I had only met him a handful of times, and he had seemed uninterested in family gatherings. Last I heard they were still together, but she rarely mentions him anymore, I added. He wasn't at the party yesterday, which I thought was strange for the father of the birthday boy. Frank nodded, making another note. That's a solid starting point. I'll be in touch soon. 3 days later, Frank called, requesting a meeting at James's office. When I arrived, both men were reviewing documents spread across the conference table. Mrs. Preston, Frank began once we were seated, I've uncovered some concerning information about your sister's situation. According to his investigation, Cassandra was in dire financial straits. She had accumulated over $75,000 in debt, spread across credit cards, personal loans, and medical bills for Lucas, who had required surgery for a heart defect shortly after birth. Her credit score was abysmal, and she had been rejected for 3 additional loans in the past month alone. She is also facing eviction, Frank continued, sliding a document across the table. This is a copy of the notice her landlord filed last week. She has until the end of the month to pay 4 months of back rent or vacate the property. As for Tyler, he had apparently abandoned Cassandra and Lucas shortly after the birth, relocating to Seattle with a new girlfriend. He was contributing minimal child support, barely $200 a month, and even that irregularly. I also found these, Frank added, producing printouts of text messages. She has been confiding in friends about her plans to claim part of your house for weeks. These were messages exchanged between her and a friend named Jenna, a name I recognized as the woman who had opened the door at the party. The messages were damning. Adam's death is terrible, but maybe it's finally my chance to get what I deserve. That house is worth at least $800K now. If I play this right, I'll have a nice nest egg for Lucas and me. The will is almost ready. My friend Dave is good with Photoshop and found a sample of Adam's signature online from some charity auction. It looks totally legit. Bridget has always been the golden child. Time for me to get my share. She got 11 years with a great guy. The least she can do is share the wealth now that he's gone. I felt physically ill reading the calculated coldness of my sister's words. This was not just opportunism, it was premeditated fraud, meticulously designed to capitalize on my grief. There's more, Frank said gently. I ran a background check on Tyler Martin, the actual father. He has a history of domestic violence charges from a previous relationship and currently has a warrant out for unpaid child support for another child in New Hampshire. He's not someone you would want around your nephew. I sat in stunned silence, attempting to process everything. My sister wasn't just desperate. She was willing to destroy Adam's reputation and our marriage to resolve her financial problems. And her choice in partners had placed Lucas in a potentially dangerous situation. What do I do with all this? I asked, looking between James and Frank. I can't just expose all of this publicly. Lucas is innocent in all of this. He is still my nephew. James removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You have several options, Bridget. We could file charges against Cassandra for attempted fraud and forgery. That would likely result in criminal penalties for her, possibly even jail time, given the amount of money involved. Or, he continued, noting my distress, we could handle this privately. confront her with the evidence, require her to retract her claims, and potentially work out an arrangement that protects both you and the child. I left the meeting with a heavy heart and a folder brimming with evidence. That evening, I called my therapist, Dr. Laurel Chen, whom I had been seeing since Adam's death, and scheduled an emergency session. In her calm, plant-filled office, I unburdened myself of the entire situation. "I'm so angry I can barely see straight," I admitted. "But Lucas is just a baby. None of this is his fault. And despite everything, Cassandra is still my sister." Dr. Chen listened attentively, asking occasional questions about my relationship with Cassandra throughout our lives. "It sounds like this pattern of competition and manipulation has existed since childhood," she observed. "The current situation is an escalation, not an anomaly." "What would you do?" I asked desperately. "I cannot tell you a decision to make," she replied. "But I will say that compassion does not mean allowing yourself to be victimized. You can be kind while still establishing firm boundaries and consequences." After much reflection, I decided on a course of action. I would confront Cassandra privately with all the evidence, offering her a choice: face potential legal consequences for her fraud, or accept a compromise that would provide for Lucas, while requiring accountability from her. With renewed determination, I called Cassandra the next morning. "We need to talk about the will," I said when she answered. "Can you come to my house tomorrow afternoon?" "Just you, no Lucas." "I knew you'd come around," she replied, sounding smugly satisfied. "I'll be there at 2. I spent the morning preparing for Cassandra's visit, arranging documents in a logical order and setting up recording devices, as per James's advice. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, he had warned me. "So, you cannot record her secretly, but you can ask for her permission at the start of your conversation, framing it as a way to ensure you both have a record of any agreement reached." At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before opening the door. Cassandra stood on the porch, looking polished in a new outfit, her confidence evident in her posture. "Come in," I said, leading her to the living room where I had arranged 2 chairs facing each other, a coffee table between them holding a recorder, water glasses, and a folder of documents. "I hope you don't mind if we record our conversation. It seems prudent given the legal nature of what we're discussing." Cassandra hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Sure, whatever makes you comfortable, though I think this can be pretty straightforward. The will is clear." I turned on the recorder, stating the date and time, and confirming Cassandra's consent to be recorded. Then I sat back, studying my sister's face. "Before we discuss the will, I would like to understand exactly what you are claiming happened between you and Adam." Cassandra launched into a well-rehearsed story about a supposed affair 2 years ago. According to her version, she and Adam had connected during a period when he and I were experiencing problems. She claimed they met several times at a hotel downtown, that Adam had confessed his unhappiness in our marriage, and that Lucas was conceived during these encounters. "He always meant to tell you," she said, her eyes wide with practiced sincerity. "But then Lucas was born with a heart condition, and he didn't want to add stress to the situation. He promised he would provide for his son, though." I listened without interrupting, noting the inconsistencies in her timeline and the details that contradicted what I knew about Adam's schedule during that period. When she finished, I began asking questions. "Which hotel did you meet at?" I asked. "The Mandarin Oriental," she replied quickly. "And what room do you remember?" She faltered slightly. "It was on a high floor. I don't recall the exact number." "What days of the week did you usually meet?" "Tuesdays? Sometimes Thursdays." When he told you he was working late, I continued with increasingly specific questions. "What did Adam typically order from room service? What side of the bed did he prefer? Did he shower before or after?" Details that only someone who had actually been intimate with Adam would know. Cassandra grew increasingly flustered, her answers becoming vague or contradictory. "Why does any of this matter?" she finally snapped. "The point is that Lucas is Adam's son, and the will proves Adam wanted to provide for him." "Actually," I said calmly, opening my folder, "both of those claims are demonstrably false." I placed the medical records on the table between us. 2 years before Lucas was conceived, Adam had a vasectomy following surgery for a varicocele. It was completely successful, confirmed by follow-up tests. It was physically impossible for him to father a child after that procedure. Cassandra's face drained of color. She picked up the medical records with trembling hands, scanning the clinical language and dates. "These could be faked," she said weakly. "They are not," I replied, "and Adam's doctor is prepared to testify to their authenticity if necessary. But that is just the beginning." Next, I produced the legitimate will, notarized and properly filed with the court. This is Adam's actual will, prepared by James Wilson and witnessed by 2 partners at his firm. As you can see, it leaves everything to me, with no mention of Lucas. Cassandra's confidence was visibly crumbling, but she attempted to rally. "He must have changed it after this was drawn up. The will I have is more recent." The The will you have, I said evenly, is a forgery. A poor one, I might add. James has already identified multiple legal inconsistencies in the language, and the signature is clearly fake. Creating a fraudulent will is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. I continued methodically presenting evidence. Adam's journal documenting her inappropriate advances, the text messages between her and Jenna discussing the scheme, and finally, the report from Frank's investigation detailing her financial troubles, eviction notice, and Tyler's abandonment. We know everything, Cassandra, I said as she sat in stunned silence. The question now is what happens next. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then, to my surprise, she began to cry. Not the theatrical tears I had seen her use to manipulate our parents, but deep, body-racking sobs. I didn't know what else to do, she finally said between gasps. I'm going to be homeless. Lucas and I will be out on the street in 2 weeks. Tyler left us with nothing. The medical bills just keep coming. I thought if I could just get some money from the house. So, you decided to destroy Adam's reputation? I asked, my voice hardening. To tell everyone he cheated on me, to forge legal documents? I was desperate, she shouted, her sadness turning to anger. You have everything. This big house, a successful business, everyone's respect. What do I have? A baby with a heart condition, $75,000 in debt, and an eviction notice. You try making good decisions in that situation. Her outburst hung in the air between us. The raw honesty of it, stripped of the manipulation and lies, resonated with something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. Lucas is Tyler's son, isn't he? I asked more gently. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes. Adam never touched me. Not like that. I did try with him years ago. He always shut me down immediately. He was annoyingly loyal to you. And the will. My friend Dave helped me create it. He does graphic design, and thought it would be easy to fake a signature. I was going to use it to pressure you into giving me money. I never thought you would actually look into it so thoroughly. I turned off the recorder and sat back, considering my next move. Cassandra watched me nervously, clearly expecting the worst. I could press charges, I said finally. What you did was illegal, not to mention cruel and calculated. She nodded miserably. I know, but that would hurt Lucas, I continued. And despite everything, he is my nephew. I love him. I leaned forward, making sure she was looking directly at me. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to tell everyone the truth, that you lied about the affair, that Lucas is not Adam's son, and that you forged the will. You will apologize publicly to me and to Adam's memory. And then what? She asked, her voice small. We'll still be evicted. I'm not finished, I said. In exchange for your full confession and a legal agreement never to attempt anything like this again, I will help you and Lucas. Not by giving you half my house, but by setting up a trust fund for Lucas's education and medical needs and helping you find stable housing. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that after what I did? Not for you, I said honestly. For Lucas. And because Adam would want me to help his nephew, even if that nephew's mother tried to destroy his reputation. There will be conditions, I continued. You will enter therapy and financial counseling. You will maintain steady employment, and you will allow me to be part of Lucas's life to ensure he is being properly cared for. If you violate any of these conditions, the support stops immediately. Cassandra was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. I don't deserve your help, she finally said. No, I agreed. You don't. But Lucas deserves a stable home and medical care, and I deserve to have my husband's memory untarnished. This solution gives us both what we need. After further discussion of the details, Cassandra agreed to my terms. We would meet with James the next day to formalize the agreement, and she would make her public confession at a family dinner the following weekend. As I showed her out, she paused at the door. I really am sorry, Bridget. I've been jealous of you my whole life. Everything always seemed to come so easily to you. Nothing about my life has been easy, I replied. You just never bothered to look past the surface. Maybe it's time you started. The family dinner I arranged for Saturday evening was tense from the very beginning. My parents arrived early, my mother bringing her signature lasagna as a peace offering. I don't know what this is about, she said as she set the dish on my counter, but Cassandra has been calling us in tears, saying you are forcing her to come to some sort of family meeting. Just wait until everyone is here, I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. This needs to be addressed once, with everyone present. By 7 o'clock, we were all seated around my dining room table, my parents, Cassandra, without Lucas, who was with a babysitter, and me. James had advised me to record this conversation as well, and a small recorder sat inconspicuously in the center of the table. Thank you all for coming, I began after explaining the recording. I have asked Cassandra to share some important information with you. Cassandra, My sister looked pale and uncomfortable, her usual confidence nowhere to be seen. She stared down at her plate as she spoke. "I lied about Lucas being Adam's son," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Adam and I never had an affair. Lucas is Tyler's child, and I forged the will I showed at the birthday party." My parents stared at her in shock. "But why would you do such a thing?" my father demanded. "Do you have any idea what that claim did to your sister?" "To Adam's reputation." Cassandra explained her desperate financial situation, her voice gaining strength as she detailed the mounting debts, Tyler's abandonment, and the eviction notice. As she spoke, I could see my mother's expression shifting from shock to sympathy. "Oh, honey," she said when Cassandra finished. "Why didn't you just come to us for help? You didn't need to make up such terrible lies. Would you have given me $400,000? Cassandra asked bluntly. "Because that's what I would have gotten if my plan had worked. Half the value of Bridget's house." "Of course, we couldn't give you that kind of money," my father said. "But we could have helped with the rent, at least temporarily. Instead, you chose to try to defraud your own sister while she was grieving her husband." "I know it was wrong," Cassandra admitted. "Bridget has already made that abundantly clear. She has the evidence to press charges against me if she wanted to." My mother turned to me in alarm. "You wouldn't do that to your own sister, would you, Bridget?" I felt a flash of frustration at her immediate defense of Cassandra. "Even now, I could," I said firmly. "What she did was not just immoral, but illegal. Forgery and fraud are felonies." "But she is family," my mother insisted. "And she has Lucas to think about." "I am family too," I replied, my voice rising slightly. "Your daughter, too. The one who just lost her husband and then had to defend his memory against false accusations of infidelity. Where was your concern for me in all this?" My father looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. "Of course, we care about you, Bridget, but Cassandra has always needed more help, more guidance." "And whose fault is that?" I asked. "You have been bailing her out of her poor decisions her entire life. Maybe if you had let her face consequences occasionally, she wouldn't have escalated to criminal behavior." My mother gasped. "That is hardly fair, Bridget. We have always treated you girls equally." Cassandra surprisingly shook her head. "No, Mom, you haven't. Bridget is right. You always made excuses for me, always found ways to fix my mistakes. It didn't help me. It just made me think I could do whatever I wanted without consequences." My parents looked stunned at this admission. For perhaps the first time, Cassandra was taking responsibility rather than deflecting blame. "So, what happens now?" my father asked, looking between us. "Is Cassandra going to jail?" "No," I said. "I have decided not to press charges under certain conditions." I outlined the agreement Cassandra and I had reached with James's help. The trust fund for Lucas, the therapy and financial counseling requirements, and the stable employment condition. "That is very generous," my father said, looking relieved. "Especially after what she did." "It is more than generous," Cassandra agreed quietly. "It is more than I deserve." While my mother said, brightening, "This is all working out for the best. Cassandra has apologized. Bridget is helping with Lucas, and we can put this ugly business behind us." "It is not that simple, Mom," I said firmly. "Trust has been broken here. The healing will take time, if it happens at all. And there need to be boundaries going forward." "What kind of boundaries?" she asked, looking worried. "For one thing, I need you both to stop enabling Cassandra's behavior. No more bailouts, no more excuses. She needs to stand on her own feet, with appropriate support that does not perpetuate dependency." My father nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable. And I need you to respect that my relationship with Cassandra will be different now. I am involved in Lucas's life because I love him and want the best for him. But Cassandra and I will not be close the way we once were. At least not for a long time." My mother looked distressed. "But we are family. We need to stick together, especially now." "Being family does not mean tolerating abuse, Mom," I said gently. "What Cassandra did was abusive. She tried to use my grief to manipulate me, to take advantage of me at my most vulnerable. That has consequences, even within a family." The remainder of the dinner was subdued, with my parents processing this new reality. When they left, my father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I am proud of you, Bridget. Adam would be too." My mother hugged me as well, but her eyes were sad, already mourning the idealized family dynamic she had always pretended we shared. Cassandra was the last to leave. At the door, she hesitated. "I really am sorry," she said again. "Not just for the will and the lies, but for everything, for the years of competition and jealousy, for not being the sister you deserved." "I know," I replied. "And I hope the therapy helps you understand why you made these choices. Lucas deserves a mother who is emotionally healthy and honest. Do you think you will ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. but I am willing to see where this new path takes us. For Lucas's sake, and maybe someday for ours too. The drive home with my parents was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I knew one thing for certain. Our family would never be the same. But perhaps in time, it could evolve into something healthier, built on honesty rather than illusion. 1 year after Adam's death, I stood in our garden, observing the spring bulbs pushing through the soil. The daffodils Adam had planted the previous fall were blooming, a riot of yellow against the newly green lawn. I felt a bittersweet ache seeing them, knowing he had placed them in the ground with hopes of witnessing their bloom. So much had transformed in that year. The trust fund for Lucas was established and already contributing to his ongoing medical needs. His heart condition, while requiring monitoring, was responding well to treatment, and he was developing into a cheerful, curious toddler. Cassandra had surprised everyone by genuinely embracing the conditions of our agreement. 6 months of therapy had helped her recognize behavioral patterns stemming from childhood, the constant need to compete with me, the self-sabotage that had characterized many of her decisions. She had secured steady employment as an office manager at a dental practice, a job that offered both stability and benefits. Our relationship remained formal but cordial. I saw Lucas regularly, taking him for outings to the park or the children's museum. Cassandra and I didn't pretend to be close, but we had found a way to coexist peacefully for Lucas's sake. My parents had initially struggled with the new boundaries I had established. My mother, especially, found it difficult to accept that her daughters wouldn't share the close relationship she had always envisioned. But over time, they too had adjusted, learning to support Cassandra without enabling her dependency. As for me, the grief support group I had joined shortly after Adam's death had become an invaluable lifeline. 12 strangers, bound together by loss, had become friends, understanding each other in ways that even well-meaning family and friends could not. We met weekly, sharing our journeys through grief, celebrating small victories, and supporting each other through the inevitable setbacks. 3 months after the confrontation with Cassandra, we had established the Adam Preston Foundation for Legal Education, providing scholarships to students from underprivileged backgrounds interested in corporate law. It gave me purpose to envision Adam's legacy continuing in the careers of young, idealistic lawyers who might otherwise never have had the opportunity to enter the profession. Old friends had stepped up in ways I could never have anticipated. Adam's law partners checked in regularly, inviting me to dinners and events, ensuring I wasn't isolated in my grief. My college roommate, Sarah, flew in from Chicago monthly just to spend weekends with me, sometimes doing nothing more than watching movies and ordering takeout. And then there was Michael. I met him at a fundraiser for the foundation 6 months after Adam died. He was a professor of ethics at Boston University, thoughtful and kind, with a quiet sense of humor that, in some ways, reminded me of Adam. We started as friends, sharing coffee after foundation meetings, then gradually transitioned to occasional dinners. It was different from what I had with Adam, as it should be. Michael understood that Adam would always be a part of my life, that loving again did not mean replacing what came before. We were taking things slowly, both of us cautious but hopeful. Standing in the garden that spring morning, I reflected on everything Adam had taught me, not just during our years together, but even after he was gone. His foresight in preparing those documents had protected me when I was at my most vulnerable. His journal entries had validated my experiences with Cassandra when my own parents tried to dismiss them. His love continued to shield me even in his absence. I had learned difficult lessons through this ordeal, that family relationships require clear boundaries to remain healthy, that documentation is not just a legal precaution, but sometimes an emotional necessity, that forgiveness does not have to mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to persist. And that sometimes the people we expect to protect us are the very ones we need protection from. But I had also discovered my own profound strength. I had faced Cassandra's betrayal, navigated the legal complexities, and made difficult decisions about how to move forward, all while processing the devastating loss of my husband. I had found a way to honor Adam's memory, while simultaneously beginning to build a new life for myself. The daffodils swayed in the spring breeze, resilient after the long winter. I considered how grief is like that, too. Not a straight line, but a series of seasons, each bringing its own challenges and unexpected beauties. I was not the same person I had been before Adam died, before Cassandra's betrayal. I was stronger in some ways, more cautious in others, but ultimately more authentic in how I approached relationships and boundaries. Sometimes the most painful betrayals force us to find strength we never knew we had, I said softly to the garden Adam had loved. You couldn't have known what would happen after you were gone, but somehow you prepared me to face it. And in that way, your love protects me still. As I turned to go back inside, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for so long. Not because the grief was gone, it never would be completely, but because I had found a way to carry it alongside hope for the future. Adam had given me that gift, teaching me that love endures even when the person is gone, that preparation and honesty are acts of profound caring. If there is one thing I would share with anyone facing betrayal within their family, it is this: protect yourself with both documentation and boundaries. The people who truly love you will respect those boundaries, and the ones who do not were never safe for you to begin with. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members? Thanks for watching.
Take care.
Good luck.